Welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I am Helen Veru. This podcast is dedicated to help anyone connected to preteens and teens to give them tools, empower and inspire teachers, high school senior leaders, and parents to build the future leaders of tomorrow. We discuss about controversial and relevant topics related to the world of education, the main problems you are facing, and solutions to help you navigate your journey. We want to make a positive change in education by bringing on experts that will give you a different perspective on how you can solve the hardship you are facing today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast with me, Coach Hen. I am so glad that you're here with us for another episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And we are here to ignite, develop leaders in schools, and create meaningful connections. And if you are an educator who wants to step into getting paid for their expertise, don't forget to join my free community called From Educator to CEO, so we can actually support you in your journey. And today I want to share about an amazing guest speaker. His name is Joshua Stemper. Joshua is an educator. He's a speaker. He's the creator of the Aspire to Lead podcast. He's also a former middle school administrator and author of The Language of Behavior. And he also equips educators with trauma-responsive strategies to create supportive learning environments and drive student success through empathetic leadership. And today we're going to talk about healthy habits that build strong leadership. So welcome on board, Joshua. Thank you for coming.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Helen, for having me.
Yes, you have a lot. You have a lot of title. You are an educator. You are an author. You are you are. Do you have a podcast as well? Aspire to Lead
Yeah.
podcast, which is amazing. You were a middle school administrator. You wrote two. You have a book, The Language of Behavior, and I think you wrote another one,
Yeah,
haven't
Aspire
you?
to Lead. Yeah.
Yes, so you have two books.
Mm.
So this is it. We have the expert here on in the room. So Joshua, let's dive into the conversation. I love when I read your biography. You talk about trauma responsive strategies, and I
Yeah.
think it's so needed in schools. So as an educator, a former administrator, okay, and you're now the host of your podcast, Aspire to Lead.
Mhm.
What healthy habits have you found to be most essential for helping leaders stay grounded and focused under pressure?
Yeah, so this is a huge topic and something that I speak on quite a bit. And the reason for that is because as educators, we serve so many people, but we forget to serve ourselves. And so I know I was really great at this as far as a building leader, going around, making sure everybody was okay, their safety, making sure that they're happy coming into the building. And then by the end of the day, I haven't eaten a meal. I barely slept the night before, and this was just a cycle of no exercise except for walking the building and just finding myself just ragged, just horribly,
Mm,
just physical, mentally, emotionally drained. And so I think so many leaders, if you look at just like their timeline, there is a burnout where most leaders don't stay on the campus more than 3 years. And then you just look at teachers too, and just the education system as a whole, and this is worldwide, is that people are leaving their profession quickly. And it's like, well, hold on, let's time out because it's not about them being passionate about the profession. They still love kids, they still want to serve, they love teaching. It's all the other stuff that's combined with that because as human beings, as we know, we have a family life and we've got our professional life. And for our teachers and for our leaders, we build this into our own identity, and because of that, we serve until we drop. And so, for myself, I had to learn the hard way, and now my message is don't do what I did. let's
I
let's
love
think about
that.
some healthy habits that we can establish now before it's too late.
And I love that. Obviously, you put people first before you, and this is a huge thing I feel in education where we forget, as you said, ourselves, and we
Hmm.
want to serve because I guess you have a good heart. You want to help people
Yeah.
around you, and sometimes it's at your detriment. You don't really support yourself in that journey,
Yep.
and it's so needed your message in education because a lot of teachers, as you said, want to leave the profession, and I guess this is
Mhm.
why you actually grew into educational consultancy consistency because
Yeah.
you really because you felt deep down, okay, I have a message to share.
Hmm.
Don't get burnt out like I did. I want to make a difference in your life. So that's amazing. So leadership is often reflected as in small choices, okay, that you make every day. So how did or do your daily routines and your personal
Hmm.
habits influence the way you show up for your team, for your student, and
Yep.
for yourself? Should just give us
Yeah,
practical habits and
for
routine.
sure. Yeah, just with habits in general, I think we have a misconception with that. So I just want to kind of back up. So I'll use this as an example. On New Year's Day, everyone has a New Year's resolution typically, and they have a goal. And the people that say, "Oh, I don't do that," well, you did at one point, and you were a failure in it, and now you don't do it anymore, right? Because we have this goal, and we do this in leadership too. Is we'll have a campus goal for us on New Year's. We'll have a personal goal, and if you look at the data, it shows that most people say, "I want to lose weight," or "I want to be a healthy eater," "I want to do more exercise." January 1, right? So if you look at statistics, especially in the United States, the membership for, the gym is sky high in January. But if you look at attendance, it goes like it just drops.
Mm,
It just free falls as soon as we get to January 2nd. And most people lose out on their New Year's resolution or they fail at it within the first week. And so, why is that? Well, we haven't established any habits to make sure that our goal is going to be successful in the end. And so, for instance, if we're using exercise as the goal, okay, well, I need to think of myself as my own identity within that goal. So now it's not, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. It's, I am a healthy eater. And if I change that mind frame in my goal and I now have my identity within that goal, well, it's a lot easier to start making those healthy choices when specifically I'm looking at how I'm going to eat. The other thing, too, is I think we look at things at a grand scale. And when we do that, we get defeated before we've even begun because it's like, oh, it's too large, right? So we need to
yeah.
make sure that we're making it small and we're making it an easy habit. So, for instance, our environment, can we establish our environment so that we might have some reminders? We have some things staged so that we can set things up. So, for instance, if I am a healthy eater, that's my identity. Well, the night before, I can set up everything to have a green smoothie in the morning, right? If I
Mm,
have it all kind of put it together and set up for myself when I wake up, it's not that hard because I've already done the work prior to stage it. And then I can see that, okay, that's a visual reminder for me and to go and have a healthy smoothie. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do both personally and professionally to make sure that we're doing some simple things in our daily routine that isn't too strenuous because if it's hard, we're not going to do it. And then also have some reminders. I'm not a very good I don't drink a lot of water throughout the day. I love my coffee. I'll have several cups of coffee, but if I don't have these little water bottles everywhere,
mm.
then I won't
It's
drink
gonna be
water.
hard. Yes, it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
know
hard.
my environmentalists are probably cringing right now with the thought of that, but I have to have them everywhere in the house because if I see it, then I'll go and I'll do it. Because if I'm
Mm,
a healthy drinker, right, I want to make sure I have water in my body because I know the oxygen is going to help my brain. It's going to, of course, help my health, my digestion. Well, then I need to make sure that I stage it throughout the house to make sure that I am going to be doing that throughout the day. So I think as a leader, if we can think about that professionally too, we can
mm.
start to think about, okay, my goal is my identity. I can then stage my environment, but then also make them simple habits.
Yes, and I feel like it can be for educators, it can be for principals,
Oh, yeah.
it can be just to help them understand their identity. But how do they find their identity? How they can actually understand those stuff? Because I feel like even
Hmm.
when you want to set sometime, as you were saying, during at the beginning of the year, you set those goals, even if as small as it can be. But sometimes the consistency, finding your identity, being consistent,
Yeah.
how can they actually reach out this? It's really hard
Yeah.
to really work on that consistency.
For sure. Yeah, and you have to be diligent in that, right? And so that's why we have to build a system to make sure that
Okay.
it doesn't break down. So I'm going to give you an example on the professional side, right?
Yes, please.
So Helen, I was like I was saying, I was not taking good care of myself. I was in a real dark place and wanting to leave the profession because I just didn't feel like I was finding joy in the things that I was doing. And so one
Mm,
day I was just like, okay, enough. So I sat down and I wrote out all the reasons why I became an educational leader. And based
mm,
on that, what I found out was that there were there were just not a lot of things in my day that I love doing. There wasn't like time set aside to say, okay, I'm going to go do this and it's going to fill my cup to become a better person, better educator, better leader. And so what I found was, okay, I love connecting with my students and I love connecting with my staff. And so what I was looking at within like the last 2 weeks prior to this time was that I was in meetings all the time. I was in the front office nonstop, and I really didn't see anybody, just with the people that I
Mm,
was meeting with. And I felt like that was just like killing me inside. And so what I decided was I was going to create these relationship walks, is what I called them. And so it was just 3 to 5 minutes, go outside my office and go, connect with a kid or connect with one of my teachers, but not making it about school. Just learning about them and what makes them tick, what's going on in their world outside of school. And so I had to like make sure that I was the relational leader, right? That was my identity. That was what I wrote on my board in my office to say, okay, that's who I am. So if that's who I am, then I need to make sure that I have touch points with that. And so talking about my environment, right? Every day before I left to go home, I had a little clipboard with a spreadsheet essentially with names
mm,
of all of my teachers. And then I
mhm,
had little areas where I could check off that I went and I had those little conversations with them. And the reason I
mm.
did that was it was a visual reminder for me, and I would stick it right in front of my computer. Because what I found was in the
Yes.
mornings, every time I came into my office, what was the first thing I did? Log into my computer. Well, if that
Yeah.
little clipboard was there, it was a good reminder to say, okay, I need to go do this. And I typically try to do it before my day got crazy and insane. And so it
Nice.
also kind of set my day up for success because then I'm doing something right away that I'm joyful in.
I like
And in
that.
addition, it built wonderful relationships with my staff members. They became more open. There was more trust. They felt like I was a reliable person for them in their life to provide resources if they needed it, whatnot. So there were a lot of benefits for that. But, I also found, trying to reward myself in doing that. If I went and did it, I'm going to then get a second cup of coffee, which I love,
Okay.
but I wouldn't reward myself unless I did the walk, right? So there
Wow.
was some other ways that we could kind of enhance our habits by kind of trying to pull something in that's going to
Mm-hmm.
give us a little carrot with our habit. So
Yes.
nothing that's
Okay.
unhealthy, but something that's going to reinforce the behavior.
I like that. And as well, you were setting your priorities, and I feel that it's important as educators and even as leaders, we know what our priorities. And your priorities were not only academic, it was also, as you said, relational. It
Yeah.
was also to build a community deep down. So I love that. You often speak about empathetic and trauma responsive leadership. Okay,
hmm
so why is it so important for leaders to intentionally protect their energy, focus, and mindset in order to effectively support others?
Yeah, so the language of behavior was constructed actually by a blog post with my wife and myself. So we
Okay.
have 6 kids. It's a
Okay.
crazy household.
Yes, it
So,
is.
yes, it is. So we were foster parents in the state of Texas for 12 years. And in doing so, you have to go through a lot of training. And so
Mm,
I was reluctant at first because we had 2 biological children at the time. But we went through the training and I got a trauma-informed training throughout that process. And what I found was that what they were doing on the foster care side was far different from what we were doing on the school side. We were
okay.
very punitive on the school side. And I was running into just frustration because I was feeling like the things I was putting in place, detention, ISS, OSS, even as hard as expulsions, was not helping the students. It was actually just hurting and creating more of a cycle. Well, then going into leadership further, I was thinking, okay, we talk about the brain and the things that our kids have gone through, right? Those adverse experiences, the trauma that
Mm,
potentially exists in their life. And then if you look at statistics prior to COVID, it was that 70% of all human beings on this earth have gone through at least one form of trauma. So that's the majority, not the minority, right? But we don't think
yes.
of it that way.
Yes.
Well, those kids grow up to be adults, which means that our stats are with our adults just as much as our kids, right? And we talk about our
Totally.
kids as far as hunger and potentially not knowing whether they're going to sleep at night and some of the things like divorce and whatnot and how it affects the mind and the body and for our kids. but in those statistics, the adults are in there too. We just don't talk about it. And so
Yes.
as a leader, I got to have empathy in regards to what's going on in the lives of my staff, but then also the other people that we serve, which is the parents of our kids. And so those problems don't go away. And so unfortunately, a lot of people think as a leader, oh, empathy is a weakness, but in fact, it's not. It's a strength. And so I just
Yes.
ask that everybody has this lens of understanding. Not that we know everything, right? Because I can't have every experience that ever existed, but at least I can understand the situation to know that I can be a helpful partner in that for success. So, for
Wow.
instance, I had a teacher that didn't show up one day, called in sick late, like 2 hours after the fact. We were worried. We're
Wow.
trying to figure out where this teacher was. Next day, same thing. Didn't come in, no call, no nothing. So, this happened for multiple days. Finally, we did a wellness check. We actually went to this person's
Wow.
apartment,
Amazing.
checked on that teacher, and found out that they were going through a major anxiety experience where
Wow.
they were crippled. They could barely get out of bed. And
Wow.
so I know it was frustrating for everyone involved, right? As far as professionally, there were teachers coming down. They were not empathetic. They were like, let's get rid of this person. They obviously are not reliable. And so we had a choice, obviously, as an admin team, and we decided, no, we're gonna love on this person. We're gonna make sure that we're there as a resource for them. And so we got assistance through the district, got them set up with a mental health advisor and person that's gonna help them. And 2 weeks later, we started a plan to slowly implement them back into the professional setting. And within 2 weeks, we were able to get them from one period to an entire day. Now,
Wow.
that's not typical. We had to be a little creative with that, right? But we built a system where they were going to get the help they needed for them to be, well, long-term success, which was exactly that, right? They were given some grace in that moment. They got the help they needed, and then over time, they got back to their norm, and they were extremely successful on our campus.
Wow. Sorry, Joshua. I had to post right now. Like, this is amazing. Like, this I've never worked for any leader like that, and
Mm.
I feel like this is so needed. We need more, I wouldn't say Joshua, but I believe like more leaders like you who really understand what people are going through.
Mm.
And it really speaks from your heart, from the heart of your admin as well. Because as you were saying, in most of the schools, it's very punitive. Is if you don't do the work, then you being
Yep.
laid off. And it's all come from the heart. And I feel
Mhm.
like, could you say that louder? Like that more leaders, school leaders really, I feel, are in tune with their emotions. Because even that, when you talk about that, it made me think about the fact that some school leaders are went through those
Oh yeah.
adverse childhood experience as well.
Yeah.
So they are not able to see, what other people are dealing with themselves. So
Hmm.
I feel like it's needed in the hierarchy as well. So they can actually change their mindset and
Yeah.
be more in tune with their heart and their emotions. So I love that. I love that you are, helping your team with that.
Yeah.
Trauma responsive leadership is so needed in schools. So
For
I
sure.
believe that many leaders know what healthy habits they should build, okay, by now.
Yeah.
Okay. But consistency can be, as I said, a challenge.
Yeah.
So what advice can you tell them, okay, to build the healthy habits,
Mhm.
but don't struggle to maintain them. So what advice can you give some educators or administrators?
Yeah, I think we are our own worst enemies when it comes to this. So consistency when we think about that word, unfortunately we think of a full cup. Like if you have a line of cups, right, or glasses, and you're
Mm,
filling each cup, right, each day. I'm filling it all the way to the top, which is I am fulfilling my goal. And I go through every day and I'm filling that cup all the way to the very, very top of the brim.
mm,
That's not consistency,
mm,
right? We are human beings and we live crazy lives. As educators, we do. It's hard. It's a struggle. And so whatever your goal is, right? If we go back to let's say it's exercise. Let's use that as our goal for our year that we're trying to be consistent and have habits in. If we think about, okay, 60 minutes is all the way to the top of the cup.
mm.
Are you really going to do that every single day? Probably not. But if I
Mm,
do 10 minutes in a day, I still consider that you are consistent with your goal. And that's a it's a mind shift. And there's a lot of mind shifts I think our educators and our leaders need to make in regards to our habits about how we're being successful in that. The other thing too, I would say is if you don't have a journal that coincides with your goal, most likely what you're going to do is, oh, I didn't do very well, or you don't have any data or tracking to understand that no, there actually is growth in that the habits that you've created, you actually have done quite a bit. And if I was to journal and record every time that I did exercise, if it was a walk, if it was a run, elliptical, whatever it might be, right, for that day, and I recorded that, I would be surprised. I know for a fact I would be surprised after a month going back and looking at all the things I had done during that month. And that's going to generate, obviously, encouragement to move forward with that habit and to consistently move forward in doing that. And so I think a lot of times we just have this misperception of, I'm not doing it consistently, I'm not doing a very good job at it, and I'm already a failure. And I think if we have this mind shift and then also some tracking to show the growth in that, I think that's going to help us as far as moving forward in that habit.
yes. As you say, setting up smaller goals, that's what makes the difference. Let's talk
Yeah.
about sustainable leadership. Okay. So what is sustainable leadership, first of all, and
Mhm.
how that can prevent burnout?
So the sustainable leadership thing, I think for myself, I kind of went back to what brings me joy in my profession. I think that was going back to that piece because I think too often what we do is we get stuck in the mundane, right? The things that we have to do that we hate. And if you are doing that from I was going to say 9 to 5, but as we know, educators go a lot longer than that in their day. But let's just say for 9 to 5, you're doing only the things that you hate,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to be able to sustain
No,
that long
you're
term.
not.
No.
No.
So I would ask that everybody sit down and do what I did when I got burnt out, which was why are you in the role that you're in? And if you
Mm,
can't think of anything, well, then it might be time to make that shift. And I got to that point. That's
yes.
why I do what I do now. I got to a
Yes.
point where I wasn't finding enjoyment anymore. I love people. I love helping. Like you already said, thankfully you said, what you said about like my heart. I do want to serve people and I still do that in the role that I'm doing. It's just that I had to make a shift out of the role that I was in to find something else that was going to better me. And so
Yes.
I think everyone just needs to have kind of that assessment piece so that they understand, okay, is this sustainable? And if you can write things down that is your why, that you're finding uh, joy in, then I think that's the sustainable part. And then, like I said before, you got to insert that into your day because too often I would be in my car at the end of the day and going, was there anything that was really that fun? Was there anything that I like filled my cup during that day? Or was it just what felt like a beatdown? And so this is, like I said before, it's a hard position, and so you need to find a support system of people that are going to
Mm,
uplift you, that you can talk to. I hope that you have people that can speak into your life as far as a
yes.
coach or a mentor of some sort too.
Yes.
In addition to just the system that you're in, that you have a community that is going to, build you up and pick you up during those tough times. But I would say individually, what you have control over, your circle of control, is what are you doing that's going to actually, bring you joy in the role.
I love that. I love that. And just one last question. Okay, closing questions. Okay, so every leader listening to us today, okay, so they can transform their leadership.
Yeah.
What would you encourage them to do to do tomorrow? What they should start to do tomorrow? Any leader listening to us, so they can transform their leadership.
Oh goodness, this is I could think of like 1,000 things, Helen.
Okay,
Yeah.
just think about two then.
Well, I'll go back because I haven't really talked about it, but there are people that speak into my life often. And if you don't have anyone that has been in your role, has been in that position, has been successful, I would say that I have many mentors in my life. And I can say this
Mm,
on a personal level or a professional level, but I think you should be seeking consistently people that you can meet with on a monthly basis, weekly basis, whatever you can set aside for time, because I think it's really important. I'm obviously I'm a big person in regards to mental health. I go see a mental
Mhm.
health professional myself at least every 2 weeks because I think it's
Mhm.
important to be able to speak to someone,
Mhm.
and I think there's just a healthy back and forth that exists in different spaces. If you're religious, maybe you have a religious mentor. If you're an educational leader, hopefully you have another leader that can speak into your life about that. So I think there's just people that need to exist that's going to give you wisdom when you need it, give you advice in situations that you don't know how to maneuver in. And we
Mhm.
don't know it all. Unfortunately, we feel like
No.
we have to have that, and we put on this like Superman or Superwoman cape when we get into the role and position, but we don't. We have a lot of growth that needs to exist. And so to put important people in our lives to make sure that they're helping us navigate is going to make us way more successful.
I love that. I love that. And accountability is very important as well.
For sure.
So I'll leave you with this, anyone listening to me, anyone listening to us. Okay. The habits you practice daily become the leadership legacy that you leave behind. Okay.
Yeah.
Every small and consistent actions that you create, okay, it creates extraordinary impact over time. So don't
Mhm.
forget to like, share, comment, and also to join my free community. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Joshua, for being part of the podcast today.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you connect with us on Instagram at The Case for Success. Check also my link tree and become an affiliate of the Success Guide for Teens Academy, a program that will empower your school community as a parent, teacher, and high school senior leader. Do not hesitate to reach out, comment, and share. Until then, see you in the next episodes.